Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Vibhuti Jha. This week, again, we will talk about the most important event, political event in India, that was abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, integrating the entire Jammu and Kashmir with India. Of course, there is one area of Jammu and Kashmir state which has not yet fully been resolved, and that is the POK matter. We will talk about that a little later. But important thing is that it's almost a little over a month that the promulgation was issued and a decision was taken. Since then, a lot of water has gone under the bridge. The entire international scene has been charged up. India has been asked to be the to hold the moral high ground, to ensure that everybody is getting justice, the benefits of democracy. But then Pakistan, which is the interfering state, is not held to any other standard other than what they are doing right now, is to disrupt the entire process of integration of India. So to discuss this matter, I have the great privilege of welcoming Mr. Mohan Wanchoo. Mr. Mohan Wanchoo is a very prominent NRI in Long Island. He is an entrepreneur and a Kashmiri and an activist on natural basis to protect the interests of Kashmir. My second guest is a very prominent Indian here, Dr. Raj Bhayani. Bhayani Sahab, welcome to the program. Dr. Raj Bhayani is very well known in the Indian community. He doesn't need any introduction by me here. So let's get on to the subject matter straight away. And to discuss this, I wanted to check with you, Mr. Wanchoo, that one of the things that has happened is that the Kashmir issue has been, in my opinion, I said it in my previous program, that the entire state, which has three distinct cultural identity of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, got somehow nominated as only one name, like Kashmir. So whenever you talked about the state, people had colloquially begun to talk about Kashmir, whereas Jammu and Ladakh got ignored. With this promulgation of abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, we have re-established the cultural identity of Ladakh as well as Jammu. Now, the point which is very important to remember here is that Hindus, they were literally thrown out of Kashmir area, which forms essentially 17 or 18% of the total area that is called Kashmir, right? Am I right about that?
It's actually, Jammu has a larger percentage than Kashmir, and Ladakh was the largest land area.
So I'm on the right track with reference to that inference, but that's what my concern was, that somewhere along the line we ceded. The entire discussion was as if Kashmir made up of all the Kashmiri people made up the entire state of Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, as I prefer to call it in that fashion. So tell us something about what has happened since then. We see Pakistani belligerence in a remarkably pathetic way, because that country has suddenly lost out their locus standi to be so-called self-declared protectors of Kashmiris, and it has all shifted over to India. And if my reports are correct, what I have heard about is that Kashmiris by themselves are now saying that at least we know now who to deal with, instead of this group, that group, or Pakistan. Your thoughts on that?
Sure. So first of all, Vibhuti ji, thank you very much for inviting me here. A lot has happened in the last 1 month. We had this dream come true, that we didn't think that the abrogation of Article 370 and 35A would happen in our lifetime, but it did. So congratulations to the Modi government, for making this happen. And unfortunately, after this wonderful thing, we are now confronted with a lot of belligerence and a lot of misinformation that's guided into the media from the Pakistan lobby. There's a lot of action that the Pakistanis are conducting. They're conducting national campaigns, of course, started here in New York, and then this thing is expanding beyond our shores, and now they're going to European countries as well. It is, I think, our moral duty at this time to aid the government in what they have done. when I say moral duty means, obviously the Pakistanis are fighting a media war because they know that they do not have any ground to stand. And therefore now they're spreading this misinformation about Kashmir, that human rights are being violated, that people don't have access to communication, etc., which is absolutely incorrect. People do have communication. They have, the government has put in many landlines, and the citizens of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are able to speak with their loved ones over landlines. That's no problem. The restrictions have been lifted in most of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. They have been lifted completely in Ladakh. They have been lifted completely in Jammu. They've been lifted in many districts of Kashmir. Only a few trouble areas, the restrictions have not been lifted. But to kind of sum it all, what I am saying is that now Indians have to get together and fight this media war that Pakistan is fighting with the world by spreading misinformation. What can we do? We can present the real facts about the state of Jammu and Kashmir, so we can educate the people of the United States and also the world as to what really the situation is, so that then Pakistanis cannot hijack the situation.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Raj, what I wanted to ask with you and solicit and elicit your opinion was that we Indians in the United States are very well respected by the media at large, by the politicians and the communities at large. As one senator once told me, we love you Indians as immigrants to this country because you are highly educated, you are professionals, you contribute to the communities, you have family values, you take care of your children, you are highest median income, and you ask for nothing. Is the time come, has the time arrived for us to become assertive in demanding a shift in the US policy towards India, both in terms of media as well as political support? Because that's critical, because we don't make noise, we don't make sound and fury with the American political system. We don't even know how to ask. So has time arrived to correct the perception, like New York Times and Washington Post? They have some designated writers from India who spew venom. They act as if the freedom and liberties are only, the moral high ground rests only with India and not anybody else. So to that end, how do we use our position, our abilities to interact with them, and the word which I want to use, how do we generate clout in the system that is much more required, that people listen to us?
See, what has happened as Indian community, and it's a good thing about us as well as the bad thing. We come from different states in India, and somehow we kind of remain in different groups, and that has divided us even when we are in America. So what happens is, in that situation, we don't have one voice going to politicians, or we don't have one voice going to the media. So what is of extreme importance, if all the Indian people who are in the United States is create one voice as the Jewish lobby has done. So when we have large section of Indian society representing and speaking one language, they will listen. What we do is, we are very connected. You are connected with this senator we mentioned, and we are connected with some congressman, but we have our personal relationship, and we never have a agenda which should be there that, look, we will stand by you only when time comes, you will stand by us. We never demand that. We are interested in, as other people say, just photo shoots with them, have some picture in some media or have some picture on TV, and that's all. We don't look into the substance of the relationship, we just look at the external features of the relationship. Unless our relationship deepens with them to such an extent that they will take us very seriously, they will not take us for granted, until then we will be at the losing end with either politicians in America or the media with America.
Now that's a very valid point, and you talked about the fact that we Indians somehow remain fragmented. But it is very interesting again, that it's only under the banner of NRI, non-resident Indians, that we have one identity. Because when issues like this happen, people from all over the country are together. So there is a Kashmiri, there is a, you know, you are from
Gujarat,
I am from Bihar. Today we are talking about Kashmir as a national issue. One of the things that you mentioned, Mohan, was that disinformation or correct information, disinformation must be stopped, corrected, and a correct information must be disseminated, which is very, very required by us. So for example, so when Bernie Sanders and the Democratic candidates or the media here, I'm not naming names for any accusation, but citing as an example, when the rest of the world begins to talk that we are concerned about house arrest or communication being snapped, we forget that when you take a very tough political measure, you have to take certain preventive action. Kashmir has had one serious flaw, that because the social media was active, any action taken by the government had immediately turned into a violent protest. So the government learned lessons from that, and to prevent that violence from happening or uprising like Hong Kong that had happened, so government took preventive measures. And I think in democracy you have as much a right to ensure that there is no violence and innocent lives lost, as it is to provide freedom to communicate. So there is a suspension of rights sometimes that can be done. People said that people of Kashmir had to be taken into confidence. When you take a tough measure, you have no time into no way you can give people to react any which way they want. And thus, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, little bit of a preventive steps were taken. For example, you know, even terrorism in Kashmir, I'm told that it is restricted to only 4 or 5 districts. Most of the districts are free. Jammu was free, so was Ladakh. But it's only in 4 or 5 districts. Kashmir with a population, Srinagar, with a population of 1.17 million, was calling the shots for the whole state. Your thoughts?
Sure. So your point very well taken. All these, the 3 components of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, the problem was only in the Kashmir Valley and only in a few districts of Kashmir Valley. It's very heartening to know that, you know, when you go to other districts in the Kashmir Valley itself, they are all for India. They're very happy, you know, with the local government. They're very happy with the Modi government, and they want to have a piece of the action and enjoy all the good things that the new government, you know, will be bringing to the state. Having said that, it is certainly, you know, you brought out a very good point that if, let's say, you curb the ability for people, you know, to, let's say, send hate messages, hate-mongering messages, you curb the ability of people, you know, to send mass, you know, problem and problem-making messages, etc., etc. You know, it's in the best interest of the state.
The other part, which is also important, Raj, before we cut for the next break, is that internationalization of this crisis. I mean, I heard Bernie Sanders, I don't think Bernie Sanders even knew about it, but he was prompted by his campaign manager, who was of Pakistani origin, to say something. Now, it's time for us to remember that we have to reach out to these politicians, that for God's sake, for your own sake, do not make uneducated, you know, inflammatory statements. How do we do that? You have a minute to sum it up.
So what we need to do is, which is extremely important, and myself and Mohan are working on it, we need one PAC, which is a political action committee, and that PAC has to reach out all the politicians in the United States, and it cannot be just New York based PAC, it has to be national PAC, and all the Indians all over the country should be involved into that, so that we can go to them, and when the issue comes, there are 50 congressmen, 10 senators come out right there, right then, and talk on behalf of India. Unless we create that kind of structure, anything else is short of our efforts. We're not doing enough. So that has to happen, and we are taking some baby steps on that, and we are getting involved some good people into that. And I think within 6 months to 1 year, we will have a structure. We will have at least 50, 100 congressmen and senators involved, and we can have one voice, and they'll be always talking on behalf of India. As soon as that happens, the narrative in American media will change right away, because right now, as you see, only Tom Swazi came against it, Bernie Sanders came against it. Nobody else means, of course, Trump said, I'm out of it. The Mattis just came out and said Pakistan is the worst country in the world. But we need more people to come out and talk for India positively, and it will not happen unless we are back, because at the end of the day, the Pakistanis have been very successful donating the money to the campaigns, and that's why as soon as campaign money comes in, the politicians speak.
Money speaks.
That's
and
it.
I'm very heartened actually to hear from both these gentlemen that there are concerted efforts being taken. Stay with us. We'll be back soon after this short break. Welcome back. It was very heartening to hear from Raj and Mohan that we need to have a national pact to support the entire agenda. Now, it is very important also to know these things are not easily done, because it requires sustained and concerted effort to put your point of view in front of the people who matter. So with this in point of view, I would also want to know talk about this with all of you here, that what must happen now onwards. So 6 months is a long time, but you have United Nations General Assembly coming up. You know that Pakistan is going to be playing bonkers. He will say anything about it. Pakistani Prime Minister has already threatened of nuclear war, and his minister said war is not an option. His own Pakistani justice lawyer in the international court has said that Pakistan has no legal standard with reference to this case. Harish Salve, who is international, who represented India in the famous spy case of Jadhav in the court, in the International Court of Justice, and made significant breakthroughs. He said legally everything is perfectly done, and in his personal opinion, this was the only way to do it. So moving forward that conversation, what do you think, if you were the speechwriter for Prime Minister Modi, he's very crystal clear with his messaging, what do you think he must address, one or two key issues which completely negates Imran Khan's belligerence and, I would dare to say, madness?
Sure. So first of all, Modi ji is a prolific speechwriter himself. I don't think I'd be able to reach his caliber, but
every prime minister, president has a speechwriter, or they
Yes.
ask for the thoughts.
Sure.
So which are the thoughts, one or two of them, that you in your opinion, if he makes them, he has won your heart?
Sure. I would like Modi ji to kind of just describe the history of Kashmir and how Kashmir was the soul of the Hindu civilization, and how it is a integral part of India. It always was, it always is, and it always will be. And also provide some information about the mass killings and all the terrorism that was happening in the state, and how by abrogating this article, he'll be able to, and the Modi government will be able to, bring prosperity into that state, so that then the state enjoys all the benefits that all the other states within the Indian Union enjoy. I think if Modi ji concentrates on that message, he would win the hearts of all the people in the audience.
I'll have to add something to that.
Yeah, I will come to you to add, but let me just comment on that. It's very nice to know that Mohan could convey exactly the 2 or 3 points that he wants it to be addressed. And that's where the important part comes in, creating our own narrative. And the narrative that Kashmir was India, is India, the entire Pakistan land also is India, that was given on August 14th to Muslims as a theological or religious divide of the requirement that Muslims wanted to be separate, is India too. So the world doesn't know that. Believe it or not, a whole lot of Americans, believe that India is the occupier in Kashmir. That's a sad narrative, and that narrative needs to be restated. And I think there is nobody on the planet Earth who can do better than Mr. Modi himself, and it is to his success of his diplomacy that the entire world has accepted that this is an internal problem of India. Your thoughts on this?
Yes.
And you can also
Yeah,
add.
definitely. No, I support Mohanji, what you said and you saying it. But I think we should obviously address the issue, what is happening in Kashmir. At the same time, I think once it should be some part of the speech, but the major part of the speech is what's next.
Right.
And what's next should be, we should make deliberate attempts to focus the entire world on Pak-occupied Kashmir. That should be our strategic move, and that should be our focus. We should say, look guys, Kashmir, which is in India, is finished. It's ours. So forget about it.
It always was.
It
Now
always
we are
was.
restating that. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
let's focus on Pak-occupied Kashmir. Let's focus on how we can integrate that to India or make it independent. If we turn the table against Pakistan on their own game, that will achieve a lot in this UN session, I believe.
I totally agree with you, because that is the important part, to rewrite the narrative.
Yeah.
The world doesn't know that. Mr. Modi has taken exemplary steps to build relationships with many parts of the world. He's a first-time visitor to a country, Bahrain, Mongolia. No Indian Prime Minister had ever been there. So these are very vital steps in creating the global narrative. Even Pakistan was crying that even Organization of Islamic States did not support it. Now that is, when you have put your enemy on the mat, this is the time, I mean, let's not mince words on that. If your enemy is on the mat, it's time to finish. There is no question of giving them life again. The other part which is very important, and I totally agree with you on that, that what is next? POK is next, definitely, and it will. That's what Bilal Bhutto made the statement. Ki IO ko, Kashmir ko chodo, POK ko bachao. So that's the point which they are aware of, that they have lost the legal hold on that land.
They know it. They know Kashmir is gone.
They
know international society, nations have neglected Kashmir integration with India completely.
Correct.
They're just making the noise to address their own constituency. Imran Khan is just making some noise here and there to have some stand with his constituents. They know in their heart that this is over.
Right.
And no country and United Nations is standing by them. So it's done deal. So to save the face, they're making some noise. They will make some protests in front of UN. We are ready. We are about 2,000 people we are putting together to bring our Indian supporting and jubilation and celebration for Kashmir in front of UN. We'll be doing that. So the narrative has to shift, and I believe, and I actually have some kind of information that Modi ji will be stressing on Pak-occupied Kashmir more, so that when this guy comes in, he will have nothing to say. What he's going to say?
Yeah,
that is very important.
Very important. And I'm very delighted to, Raj shared with all of us here right now that 2,000 people would be coming in support of Mr. Modi and India and Kashmir, Jammu, Kashmir.
And we
Ladakh,
appeal everybody to join that.
Yes, and
Mohan, give the time and date where they should come. He knows.
Yeah, we will definitely let you know more about it in the next program. However, there is one other important element here, is the ignorance part of it. There is a media part, there is a political part, and there is an ignorance element. A whole lot of people don't even know, and I'm 100% sure that most of the political candidates, is the presidential election season, and they will be talking about democracy, the freedoms and everything else, while democracy must protect the rise and integrity of a country of its own. So how does democracy allow people under the freedom of right? It's a brilliant thing to happen, freedom of speech, but does other side of the world recognize freedom of speech in the way we do it? So when people begin to protest and indulge in violent acts like they did in London during the 15th August celebrations, What must be done to stop that from happening? Do we have, as the democratic citizens of the country, of this country, the largest democracy, what must we do so that people do not indulge in violent protests?
Sure. The first thing that we can do is provide information over to the general public. What happens is that the Pakistanis think that just because they can spread false information, they are somehow convincing the audience to kind of think along those lines, along their lines. If we can provide information that sets our narrative in front of the audience, now the people who hear all the false information from the Pakistani folks are able to decide on their own that what they're hearing from the Pakistanis is incorrect, and then they can make decisions on their own. The second thing we need to do is, we do hear about these troubling incidents where there was violence in England in front of the Indian High Commission. There was violence in other parts of the world. We need to let the governments of those countries know that this will not be tolerated. This is wrong, and countries like the United States and all these European countries, they have respect for the rights of human beings. They have respect for protecting the citizens of those countries. We need to be more vocal and let the governments know that they need to do a lot more than what they're doing, because the protection of their citizens is their #1 duty.
And and it is also important now. There is a thing called creating an relevance for your own country and your own processes in the eyes of somebody else. So let's take an example. Today, India is in a vital position economically to offer opportunities to other countries, whether it's for defense weapons or economic growth, joint ventures and collaborations. Economics plays a key role. So while United States is interested in enhancing its trade, commerce, military, non-military, so is Russia. India has its own unique position because Mr. Modi has created a situation in which Iranian oil can be bought at in rupee terms. So India's trading role is big. India's manufacturing opportunity is big. So India has to build that narrative that every country needs India because it offers alternative to China as an economic miracle. India has the ability to lead the world economic growth along with other countries, not alone by itself, but in partnership with many countries. We can stave off certain economic disasters if we followed a good policy. So in Kashmir particularly, Raj, your thought I will elicit first before we jump into the next segment, is that economic activity in that region has suffered. 70% of the funds given to them were grants, 30% were loans. My question is, where did those grants go? Why there is no CAG audit of who took that money and where did it go? You have a minute, then we will switch over to, we'll continue the dialogue in the next segment as well.
As we know, what they call the resident state of Kashmir, the law which was there, which Maharajas did it during British time because they knew, and everybody knows, Kashmir is the most desirable place in India and in the world for the location, the beauty and the nature and everything. So they were worried that people will come in and they will take over the land and properties and everything. So they stopped it. Now, when it integrated with India, Nehru continued that policy, which is unfortunate. So that has caused the economy of the state is completely in disaster, and there is no GDP, there is a lot, all the money is wasted, and the politicians which rule the state for last 50 years have taken all the money and built their own palaces and the bank balances and policies bank accounts. That's where all money has gone, and there is an audit already started. Because now in the past, Indian auditor cannot go to Kashmir and audit.
Correct.
Now with this removal of this Article 370, auditing has already started. All the responsible parties will be held accountable, and I'm sure Chidambar is on the way in, the Shiv Kumar is on the way in, there is Omar Abdullah and clan and the Said clan are on the way in.
As you can see, Dr. Raj Bhayani is very, very, very firm with his statements, and I like it because I am myself that way. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this short break. Welcome back. We were talking about the Pakistani belligerents, but taking advantage of the rule of law, democracy, freedom, there are people within the country as well who almost get more intemperate in their choice of words describing the situation. I don't need to name them, but what is important here is to somewhere along the line, we Indians as a community need to reflect on it and ask questions of them who criticize hiding behind taking shelter of freedom of expression or rule of law. These are values that we all respect because we are part of a democratic process. No objection to that at all. But when a false narrative is deliberately promoted by us Indians in foreign media, what do we do to address that? It's important also because these narratives end up hurting, because the foreign media then begins to believe that the dissenters are the ones who are telling the truth. The majority of us are probably diving into it just to force a point of view. Your thought on that part of it? There are certain names we know who deliberately chant the anti-India mantra, and just because BJP is in power, so it is everything is Hindu Raj, Hindutva, and everything coming out without ever explaining what exactly is Hindutva. It's not evil, it's not violent. Why people are not talking about the correct perspective? I don't see any response to that coming from anywhere. So New York Times did an article of Imran Khan's who threatened nuclear war, and there is no reaction from the world around us unless one Indian chose to write back. But his viewpoint just got mentioned as such, but not covered as yet.
Sure. The basic philosophy of Hinduism is, to preach nonviolence, preach acceptance, preach loving our neighbors, preach loving human beings, etc., etc. That's all well and good, if the world that you live in is a good world, and therefore, all these values, have their right place. But even in the Mahabharata, Lord Krishna said that, when you are being unfairly treated, pick up your bow, uthao gandiv, and protect yourself. It is that portion that we are not kind of very comfortable with in the general context. And I think the time has come that we need, to pay heed and pay attention to that part of our culture where we have to protect ourselves, and then we also have to fight back the information warfare. You are absolutely correct, Vibhuti ji, that the false information that's been presented by Imran Khan in the New York Times should have gotten a very a tough response, but it didn't. However, we are waking up. For example, just yesterday, the Kashmiri Overseas Association, which is headquartered in Maryland, has put out a press release, which has actually gone viral and hit the social media and lots of newspapers, etc., etc. Which is the first time that the Kashmiri people have put their own narrative. It describes the history of Kashmir. It describes how hundreds and thousands of Kashmiri Hindus were butchered and killed and raped, etc., etc., and then they had to leave their own homes under very dire circumstances. These types of this information was never presented in the international media or in the social media, and I'm very happy, that in Hindi they say "Der aaye durust aaye," that it was not, fighting back was not a very prominent part of the Hindu culture, but now we are responding in the correct manner, and are providing the information that the world needs to hear about the correct narrative.
Talking about the culture part, that's very important. You said that we are generally peace-loving people. We are generally, in our DNA, Shanti is a big word. And we all love to, because we have a whole lot of communities that do not eat non-vegetarian food. They are vegetarians by choice, by conviction, by belief systems. So that does impact, our basic thinking from that point of view. Sarve bhavanti sukhina and sarve bhavanti niramaya. As everybody wants to be peaceful. Let there be general peace. But here comes a very important point. And that point relates to, we have had very many warrior races. And it's a very important point to talk about and spread along within this conversation. That while Kashmiris, 300,000 or more, were displaced, violated, and made to leave, that narrative never went viral. That India was home to so many refugees. It was, whether it's internal refugees or external refugees, doesn't matter. What matters is that they were driven out of their home. Not one Kashmiri put a bomb on him and go and explode himself. But whereas the other theological religions, Islam particularly, has a concept of jihad, in which kids are put bombs and to meet 72 hoods in the heaven. Is there something flawed in that particular practice? I have asked my Muslim friends that, do you still believe in that kind of a violence? They have no answer for that, because somewhere along the line, in their belief system, Kafirs have to be killed. How do we address that challenge? How do we create a warrior group within us that we don't let that happen to us? That is important. How do we address that, Raj?
I think it's a long-term process, and as you've seen last 2000 years, even though the Indians, they're majority Hindus,
right,
almost 800 years the Mughals rule India.
Right.
And this happened only because of only one reason, and that reason is we were not united. So when Shivaji was fighting with Aurangzeb, nobody from Punjab came to fight with him, nobody from Orissa came to fight with him, nobody from South came to fight with him. Same thing when the Punjabis were fighting with Mughals, or the Maharana Pratap Singh was fighting with Mughals, who came to help him? Nobody came. They all fought their own wars. But fortunately, it has changed now. Means as much as with RSS and then Hindu identity, now people are not only restricted to Rajasthan and Punjab and Maratha and all these things. So now we are united, and we have seen that in last 2 elections, people are voted on the basis of Hinduism, and that is a good thing. That is going to come and change, as you see in UP with the Yogi's chief minister position. All the violence in these Muslim pockets have gone down. There is no riots happening. So people are getting message, things are changing, and lot of work needs to be done. But I think it has started.
Recently, somebody asked me, would you be happy, would you accept or be happy if India is declared a Hindu state? Somebody who is totally opposed to BJP and RSS, he asked me, I said, I find nothing wrong. If we are surrounded by Islamic nations or people by any designation, if that's not a shameful thing and that's nothing wrong, what's wrong in 80% of the people demanding that we be called as we are, as a majority? So Raj, here is a very important point, in my opinion, as I see the world from my lens, is science and technology has given significant justification to our Sanatan Dharma principles. It's a very fascinating thing which I realized, because in our practice of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, we don't discriminate. That's why India has been a home to every persecuted religion who have found a home in India. So for us to be in that situation, there's nothing wrong. The question is, does the world know about it? So science and technology has advanced so much that we know that 99% we are all equal. Our noses perform identical function, and we die because of myocardial infarction. Our illnesses don't have any religion. Disease has no religion, cell phones have no religion. So in that context, Mr. Modi gave a beautiful redefinition of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam when in the International Solar Alliance he said, one sun, one earth, one grid. That's a new modern definition of Sanatan Dharma. What must we do to make this, an ongoing campaign for the world to acknowledge our blood is red, our diseases are same, we suffer the same, there are universal feelings, universal sufferings. So Raj, we have 2 minutes left. Your thoughts. I want you to...
Yeah, I guess definitely Hinduism or Hindu Rashtra is a good idea, but it has a stepwise process. So first, I think next most important thing which India will tackle soon, as we all expect Modi to tackle, is uniform civil code. So having two different constitutions for two different religions is harmful to the country. So these Muslim laws and all these laws has to go away. So uniform civil code.
Does it have to go away, or they can practice their personal laws in their own system?
Constitution
but
should not.
Constitution cannot have two discriminatory
they
laws.
Cannot.
Right.
They can do in private home inside, they can do whatever they want, same way as in America. Right. There's one law, one system, and one uniform civil code. That should be the next agenda of BJP government, and I have heard and assume is going to come in. And of course, the other thing which is very important for Hindu people is making Ram Mandir. And as we all aware, 80% of the hearing on the Ram Mandir is almost done. In fact, just 2 days back, 4 major divisions of paramilitary forces have been sent to Ayodhya. So we expect something coming out of on that soon. So slowly but stepwise, the march is there to convert India towards Hindu Rashtra. The question would be whether we need to rhetorically go telling all the world, hey, we are Hindu, or actually bring it in our practice, which is more important than just making rhetoric.
I totally agree.
So I would wait for the rhetoric and not create unnecessary alarms and bells all over the world. I would rather see real ground level changes happening in India to make it Hindu Rashtra.
Brilliant. We have had a long extended conversation. We will continue the dialogue again, but there are two things very important to talk about, and we will request you to just sum it up in 30 seconds or so. Enforcement Directorate in India gave notice to Amnesty International for foreign exchange violation. And the Congress Party, 4 prominent members of Congress Party, Shashi Tharoor, Jairam Ramesh, Sanghvi, they made statements that criticizing Modi is not the best policy. Now, do you see something happening on taking on a massive NGO like Amnesty International and the Congress Party the way it is shaping up at the moment? 30 seconds for you, Mohan, first.
The Congress Party is famous for doing things, which are not in the best interest of the country. It's a party that's, supported corruption, etc., etc. But the bottom line is, it's a very welcome act from the Modi government to take on a large organization such as this. And I don't.
You are talking about Amnesty International.
Yes, Amnesty International, and I'm sure will prevail in the situation. And I'm happy that the Modi government has taken a step like this to send a strong message to the media that no more of this corrupt practices will be tolerated in the country.
Raj, 30 seconds.
Yes, so as we realized when Modi government came in, they realized there are thousands NGOs have been audited and analyzed and scrutinized, and almost 80% have been shut down. And this Amnesty International, you just know because it's famous one, but there are at least thousands of NGOs have been shut down only for the same reason. These NGOs are conduit for the bringing money to India, which is being used for the wrong causes, converting Hindus to Christianity or supporting the Kejriwal party. So all these NGOs' money has been misutilized for the wrong purposes, and major clamping has been done in last 5-6 years. So Amnesty International, we heard now, but there are many more like that, and it's being done in last 5-6 years very systematically. Having said that, so that's one of the ways all these foundations across the world, they support anti-Hindu and anti-BJP parties and and pro-Christian and pro-socialist parties are by that. So that's why it needs to be stopped, and it is being dealt with very seriously.
Thank you very much. It has been a remarkably informative conversation. I enjoyed it. I hope you did. And I hope the panelists, both Mohan and Raj, thank you so much for coming here.
It's a pleasure.
This day.
Thank you.
So, friends, have a great weekend. We'll talk again.